Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome to the Movers Mindset Podcast, where I talk with movement enthusiasts to learn who they are, what they do, and why they do it. My guest today is Cristina Latici. Welcome, Cristina. How are you this afternoon?
I'm very well.
I'm always happy when we're in the same time zone. Because for some reason, my overly analytical left brain tries to make me say wherever you are. So, like, I get a guest in New Zealand, and my brain's just like, happy. So I'm like, yay, in the same time zone. Of all the things to talk about, right? I reached out to you like a few weeks ago, and then we did a little short conversation. I was going to say I've had the privilege. I was going to say we had the privilege, but I won't presume. I've had the privilege of meeting you in person and talking to you in person, and being at events where you were present, also being at events where you had a leadership role. So we have a bit of rapport. So I don't want to just dive right in because sometimes that confuses people who are listening. Who's listening? Nobody listens. But I reached out to you because I thought that you had, I'm going to say, a deft touch. I'm not trying to get all nerdy here. You have a deft touch when it comes to reading the space. And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, most of your teaching you do outside, but I'm thinking maybe you
Yes.
teach at schools and I don't know about that. But most of the teaching where I've seen you has been outside. So when I say reading the room, I'm waving my hands with air quotes because I mean reading the space.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talked before, I was really interested, and this is where I want to start. I was really interested in what I'm not going to ask you to unpack your thought process because sometimes people get wigged out when I ask for that. But what are you thinking, and how do you know when you've succeeded when you're coaching someone who you maybe don't know really well, and you're trying to? As a coach, I imagine there's like this. I got to figure out how to unlock this
Yeah.
puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So, walk me through some of the questions that you're asking yourself, or some of the ways that you know when it's beginning to work.
Yeah. So I usually try to do a quick check-in with a new student, and I'll just ask them what their if they have a movement practice, what their movement practice is, if they've ever practiced parkour before, if they've ever trained outdoors before. So I try to get a little bit of information about where they're coming from. And then I'll just observe them through the first part of class, and try to use the information that they've shared with me at the beginning and blend that a little bit with my observation just to see where they are. And then I usually don't give a lot of feedback when I'm just starting to get to know somebody, and that's very deliberate and really comes out of the work that I studied when I was dancing, where there was very little feedback for many months. You were just on your own, like
It's a VHS
trying to
tape. Go
figure
figure it
stuff
out.
out. Um, but I think there's a lot to that, to giving somebody space. Um, so I tend to, and I have had the experience. We talked about this the other day, where I did give a new student feedback, and it was not appreciated and really didn't go well. So unless I feel like somebody's really at a high risk of injuring themselves, I really tend to hang back. And I usually try to um, give somebody a positive observation. Um, and then I usually go with giving somebody very concrete information first, and I'll give that in small bites. Um, so I really just try to gauge where the person's coming from and how they're moving in the class.
So you coach with the movement, the movement creative in New York City, the greater New York City metropolitan area,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering. I think maybe I'm completely wrong. Tell me if I am. I feel like you have the privilege or the opportunity to be as involved in choosing what you're coaching. Like, is this an outside strength session or is this a night
Mm-hmm.
mission? That's what
Right.
I mean when I say what. I feel like you have a great deal of freedom in choosing what you're coaching. So
Yeah.
as opposed to maybe like a really junior coach who maybe works at a gym somewhere and is in one sense still learning how to coach, as then they're given their coaching marching orders, go warm up this class, do this, here's how we coach. And I'm wondering, is that part of what drew you to coaching parkour? Was like you saw this opportunity to be as involved in deciding what we, the team, are doing, as well as the actual doing? Or like did one of those come before the others? Does that make sense?
Well, that's an interesting question. First of all, when Jesse first asked me to join the coach development program, and this is after I had been training maybe for a year with Movement Creative, my first response was, "Are you sure you have the right number?" I'm not sure.
Yeah, you have the wrong. That's good.
Yeah. Uh, so it did take me quite some time, and I think it's something that I still am working on. Um, but for me, it's such a different experience coaching parkour. And I haven't coached parkour for any other organization really, except for Movement Creative. Um, it's such a different experience than the way that I taught dance when I was
Hmm.
teaching dance. Like
I was going to
very,
say,
very,
clearly you've taught dance, because I want to know, like, well, wait, if you think he had the wrong number, now you realize he didn't have the wrong number. So what did he see before he made that phone call? What did he see in you?
uh,
I don't mean that as a sarcastic cheap shot either. I mean, like, what did he actually?
do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I actually mean
Yeah.
that as an
Okay.
honest question. It's not like, oh my God, why did he pick you?
Yeah. So I think that he saw the way that I approach learning movement, and the knowledge that I've accumulated both in my body and in my brain over the many years that I now have. Uh,
35, 40, right?
yeah, exactly. Um, so so there was that piece, and I do have a lot of information in both my body and my brain, and I think the challenge for me is to try to translate that, which came from a very specific discipline and a very specific practice that feels very different to me, um, to the practice of parkour and the coaching of parkour. So uh, just trying to translate that into information that feels useful to people in what they're trying to achieve through their practice of parkour. Um, so one thing that I think I'm good at is watching people and seeing how they're executing movements, and then trying to figure out what's the information I can give them right now that's going to help them both succeed in what they're trying to do in this moment, and will give them information about what they can continue to work on over the course of time. Um, so that's something that's important to me as a practitioner as well, and something that I'm always looking for from my coaches. Like, I want information in the moment that's going to help me do the thing that I'm struggling with, but I also want information about what else can I be doing to support this movement and helping me figure out how to execute it.
Yeah, maybe the classic unknown unknowns. Like that's what I'm always looking for. Like, yes, please tell me how to do this thing that I'm trying to do, because I'm struggling here.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also, like, if my fly is open, like, please tell me about the unknown unknowns. I want to know, like, your pants are ripped. Oh,
yeah,
excuse me. Like that. So and I don't want too much of either kind. Like, don't hose me, with the beta or the details how to do the thing all day long, and don't hose me with the, you really should lose 30 pounds. Yes, I'm aware.
yeah.
Do you think that my read on you is that you have a very analytic, um, and I want to say streak, not like you're solidly like a left brain organizational hyper, but you definitely have that as a power tool. Because I've seen
Mm.
you working in some non-coaching contexts where the the cats who kind of decline to be herded, and cats who know that they're being herded can really avoid being herded. I've seen that, like, okay, that's button pushing. Yes, I see that. And I'm wondering, how do you pick and choose your battles in, not with your teammates, but when you're
Right,
coaching in the
right.
moment? I feel like the same opportunity comes up because your students probably aren't being malicious cats who don't want to be herded, but
Sure.
those opportunities are the same. You have this vision perhaps of what you're trying to accomplish, and then they're being cats that don't want to be herded. So how do you in the moment keep yourself from, I mean, maybe I'm over catastrophizing, keep yourself from spiraling into this, like, I gotta get control and manage what's going on? And how do you balance that energy of desire for control versus desire for creative freedom for the people present?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I work with the adults that I work with tend to, I know them very well. They are a very dedicated group of people. They come out almost every week, and they have been coming out for a few years now. So we know each other really well, and it's a really great group of people. Um, and I would say that as much as they come out to train parkour, they also come out because it's a great group of people, and we really enjoy
Right.
seeing each other every week. So sometimes that can lead to a lot of chit chat during the class. So that sometimes needs to be reined in a little bit from time to time. And it's just like a funny thing that we have, and everybody knows that about one another. Um, and I like to. I think sometimes I can kind of not go off on a tangent, but I do have to be careful to not spend a lot of time trying to explain everything I think I know about this thing,
Oh
or
yes,
everything
I
I think I know that I want
yes.
other people to know. It's okay to it, it's okay to leave things unsaid, I think, sometimes, or to decide, okay, this is something that I want to address at some point in the class, but today is not the day to do that. So I'm just going to bookmark this, and we'll loop back to it at some point. And I think that
Hmm.
that's a kind of a luxury that I have, just given that I have this group of people that I know I'm going to see in 3 weeks. I know I'm going to see them in 3 months. So I do have that time to take with it. The other thing I think that informs my work around coaching is the special ed work that I do with children. So, for example, I just started working with a new friend. I've only seen him a handful of times. And there is this period of time where you're just getting to know a child. So you really do have to hang back, because if you go in like a bulldozer, it's just not going to go well. So there is this dance that happens at the beginning of a relationship with a child, that I'm working with in the classroom with new teachers that I don't know, um, where they might have a certain expectation about me intervening in when certain things arise. Um, but I'm not going to do that, because it's just not the time for me to do that.
Not the time
Uh,
of the relationship with that student. Right,
exactly.
right.
So I really have to temper what I see, and knowing what the response should be, but it's not the right time for that response. I need to wait,
Hmm.
and I need to move slowly. So today with this friend, um, I am starting to see where I can be of help to him, um, and I can start to just move in a little bit, and ask him to do things or not do things that he might not really want to do. Um, and so that's where the work really starts. And I think that's kind of how I approach my coaching with parkour. Um, you have to wait. You just have to wait and see. It's not always the right time to give feedback. Um, it might be the right time to give some feedback, but other feedback needs to wait.
Yeah. I've often thought, like when I'm training, in events or places or whatever, I've often thought, oh, I always wonder what the visiting coaches really like. It's like I see a coach. I'm not talking about you in the third
Mhm.
person. I see a coach, and I see them do like they have their session, right? And it was built up as like a thing that was on the billboard. Like we're going to do this crazy thing with this person, and that this is their shtick. You know what I mean? And you're just like, wait. And it's a great session. You're like, that was awesome. And you're like, you're writing in your journal, and it's like, oh, mind blowing, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I'm thinking, do they get sick of doing that same mind-blowing session? Like, how do you how does that coach, those coaches, how do they not get pigeonholed as like the person who does that thing? And then
Yeah.
you just go from event to event to event to event to event to event to event, and you just like, oh look, it's and everybody who sees you, it's new, so it's like the David Copperfield. I just dated myself. Magic trick. It's like he's done it 9,000 times, and poof, and everybody's like, oh wow, But like, so I'm feeling like the situation you're describing with your regular students, these people you see over a long period, you can't hide in that one trick pony. You can't
No.
hide in that.
No.
You have to be like, what is today? And I have to be the coach for today.
Yeah. So I that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge, but also one thing that I really love about coaching, because I can't give the same session twice or three or four times. That's not to say that I don't use the same activities
Right.
or I definitely have a repertoire of things, but I am always looking for new content to share, whether it's a new game or a new drill or a new location can be really helpful. Um, and so thinking about, well, what am I interested in? What do I feel like I'm good at and can do and understand on a deep level so that I can share that with people? That's important to me. And it's also, uh, it's also something that I bump up against because there are things that I'm not good at, and there are things that I don't feel like I have that high level of expertise to coach, but I do. So there are times where, okay, I got to challenge myself. I'm going to try to teach this thing that I'm struggling with and that I feel like I'm not that good at, and I'm very
Mm.
upfront about it. Like, okay, I'm going to teach this thing. I'm still figuring it out. I'm not great at it, but let's give it a try. And I think my students appreciate uh, that level of honesty. Like, I'm just here figuring stuff out too.
Yeah,
Um,
you said honesty. I was thinking integrity. There's another word that fits into this better than honesty, but honesty is close enough. But yeah, I have a feeling people can, I don't know what the right verb is. People can smell that. Like they can tell, oh, this coach is not posturing. This coach is not just talking smack. This coach is, like, yep, I think we should do it this way. And they can just tell like that's an informed opinion, even if you don't look like the muscle up guru or whatever.
yeah.
That's
So and just to give an example, there was a session we had a month ago where it had snowed and I was wearing my snow boots, crazy snow boots, and everything was covered in snow and it was
because I don't want to
super
get frostbite,
slippery.
right?
And we were working on some jumping skills, and I just said, okay, I'm not going to work on trying to increase the distance or the height of my jumping. If I'm jumping up onto something, I'm not going to push that today because I know it's slippery. I'm wearing these crazy snow boots. But if that's something that you're feeling comfortable with and you're taking into account the conditions and whatever shoes you're wearing, and how you're feeling today, that's cool. And you should work on that aspect of this skill that you think is going to give you the most value today. So I always try to give people some additional space around that. Like, this is what I'm choosing to do. You're free to make a different choice, depending on how you feel and what you're looking to get out of this session.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can do that with grown-ups. You can't really do that so much with kids, because I think,
Right. You just hit the button.
yeah. So, and I think if I'm working with children in kind of a sketchier environment, I'm probably more apt to shut down the
Yeah, more
exploration
structure.
side of
Yeah.
things, and just to say, yeah, more structure, less risk taking today,
Hmm.
for sure. Yeah.
There's my head, the quotes bubble up in my head. There's a great quote from Yoda, and I forget which of it's one of the last three episodes of Star Wars, but after he's it's Ghost Yoda talking to Luke as they're watching the Jedi Temple, the original tree burn, and they're having a conversation, and Luke's bitching as usual, and Yoda says something to the effect of, "We are what they grow beyond," and the point that's being made is, yeah, they're supposed to be better than you. Like, if you're a coach and you don't make students who are better than you, you're not a good coach. It's like,
I
and
like that. I
yeah,
like that.
I'm resisting the urge to pull up the actual Yoda quote and to try and do my Yoda voice. I'm not doing it. But yeah, even Yoda made that point about we are what they grow beyond. Uh, I get so many, well, I don't know if I warned you in advance. Sometimes I pause. It's not because I'm bored. It's because I got like 9 ideas and I'm trying to pick the right one. I had a great conversation many years ago. I'm just trying to avoid unpacking the whole thing, where somebody was talking about what they thought the pillars of parkour are.
Mhm.
And this person mentioned touch, and it kind of had an interesting, like, ooh, that's a good point. Not interesting, like, what the heck are you talking about? An interesting point about there's this really kind of hard to quantify thing that you're trying to teach if you're teaching, or at least you're trying to share if you're somebody like me who just does. Um, and it kind of sounds like what we were getting near when you were discussing bad weather and snow boots was sort
Mhm.
of like touch. And people always tell me, believe it or not, tell more stories. Okay, I was training in Soldiers and Sailors, I think it is, on the
Yeah.
lower west side with the big monument, and it
Yeah.
was night. I forget what the occasion was, but somebody had us chasing each other. So we're like starting on the curb at the street, and
Yeah.
we're running west across like a little, people like paint the picture, Greg, running across a patio with a couple of benches that you could
Yep.
just like vault them. And then there was a big balustrade, like a big ass railing about 18 inches wide, stone, but there's a bit of a drop on the backside. So it's like an extra 4 or 5 feet. It's not crazy.
Right.
Lands in like mulched planter beds, and then it runs out into a lawn, but then it starts sloping down, and I guess wait under there's another road or something.
Yes.
And I don't know who it was. It was probably Roberto Santiago calling you out there, Roberto, who like paired me up with Jesse, and Jesse is chasing me. So like, this like triggers all the fight or flight stuff. I mean, like, we're friends, and I'm like, we're just having fun. But like the third time that we did it, I was running for my life, and I don't know
Yes.
why.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the touch. I'm getting to a touch point. When I went over the railing, it's just a giant. I just did the lowest step fault that I could. I don't want to go up because I'm going down on the backside of
Right.
this. So I
Right.
just I was putting like my right foot and my left hand and just getting over so that I could drop over the backside. And on like the third or the fourth pass, it's dark. You can't see what's down there. I mean, I knew that was safe. As I went over the railing, Jesse was so close behind me, my step vault was on his foot. So like he was step vaulting like under me from behind. My foot on the thing was his foot, and the two of us like slid over the thing. And it didn't bother me in the moment because for some reason I'm like, oh, it's a shoe, and I was expecting stone, and
Right.
it was just instead of I'm holding my fingers out like I'm trying to catch a basketball or something. Like
Yeah.
instead of having a contracted panic feeling, when it happened, I had this like, oh, you need to spread the feelers out, the physical feelers, the mental feelers. Because then I'm like, how does this landing work if he's that close behind me? What
Right.
happens on the ground? Um, so I've had lots of moments like that. And I think maybe not lots of moments with Jesse chasing me, but lots of moments where I feel like there was some skill that I've picked up along the way
Yeah.
that either saved me or I want to say made it so much more fun. Because in the moment I was like, that was just cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like part of what you're imparting is that touch. So I'll actually give you a question with a question mark. My question
Yeah.
is, have you ever heard of touch described that way? Because this smells like I'm next to dance. Have you ever heard it described that way? And is it something you've consciously thought that you want to try to convey to your students?
Well, so when I hear touch, the first thing that my mind goes to is the actual physical, like touching somebody else. But which I think is part of what you're talking about, but what I'm
Right.
also thinking about what you just described is a broader sense of touch where it's more this intuitive sense that develops in our bodies over time from having engaged with a physical discipline, a physical process over the course of
Mm.
time, and you you do become, and I think that's such a cool thing about being involved in a physical discipline, because this is a process that happens with unconsciously, I think, to a certain
Yes. Yes.
degree. um, and it just made me think of this story when I was dancing. uh, I was dog sitting for the women that I was training with, and the dog was nuts, and it was a huge dog, and I had to the instructions that I got from these women were I had to tie the dog's leash around my waist when I was walking it, because if the dog saw another dog, it would go nuts. And the
Yeah.
idea was that, well, it's tied around your waist, so you'll just like brace yourself and you're going to stop the dog, right?
No.
So I'm walking the dog and I have my coffee and I'm eating and like la la la, and the dog sees another dog and just takes off. And it was like a cartoon, like my cough, like everything went flying. I'm like running, trying to keep up with the dog. And I'm thinking, like, this is not going to end well. And so we were running towards a lamppost, and I literally threw my arms around the lamppost and like went spinning around the lamppost.
Mm.
And like I fell, but I was okay. People were opening their windows and like yelling down to me, "Are you okay?" But that was
Oh.
like, the first thing I thought of was like, "Oh my god, like that's because I'm a dancer. Like that's because of my training that I was able to navigate quickly this insane situation, and like I didn't get hurt." Um
Mm.
and I think that that comes up a lot, like, whether you slip and fall unexpectedly, the training that you have in your body um, is likely going to support you in some way. I mean, obviously there's accidents that happen where you could
Yeah, and limits,
potentially,
right?
yeah, there's limits. um, but what you're describing with Jesse, like you had this developed sense of touch throughout your body that allowed you to navigate that unexpected situation. And I think that's really cool. And also, I think that's something you can talk about with people, but I'm not sure you could necessarily extrapolate that concept and teach it directly.
And teach it, yeah. So you started talking about this in a dance context, like your mind seems to go to dance, like I don't know what they like when you're lost or confused. You that kind of seems to be like the home base where you reset and then come back from. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, do they? This is obviously it's a thing that's real in dance too. Do they attempt to teach that, or is it's just that's how they go? You suck, get out. You know, you're good, you're hired. Is that part of maybe what they're sensing? Is that sense of touch that the dancer is exhibiting? Like without a sense of touch, you're never going to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think sometimes I think it depends on who the choreographer is and what exactly they're looking for. And certainly there are situations where you're going into audition for somebody that you might not know personally, and they probably don't know you, and that's a situation where they're asking you to execute something exactly the way they want it executed, and you can either do it the way that they want to see it or not, and you either
Or
get the
not?
job or you don't. And then the other situation, which is more my experience as a dancer, is that you develop relationships with people, and they see you moving. Maybe they've seen you perform or they've seen you in class, um, and they ask you to work with them, and then you together develop work together, which for me was really so deeply satisfying. Yeah, I yeah,
I was just thinking that when you were saying satisfying, I was thinking, yeah, that would be rewarding. And we don't really have that in parkour or ADD. Like I was going to say there's a lot of talk. I don't mean to diminish the talk. The talk is correct. The talk is legit. There's a lot of talk about community and a lot of talk about in the French phrases for being strong to be useful, and those things are legit and real, and it's part of the practice. But I always come back to, yeah, but how does that actually get taught? And this touch idea that we've been discussing reminded me of this. Okay, how about a more specific, more parkour specific thing? And it's you really don't teach the community thing either when you. I mean, you
right,
hope to instill a sense of community in the people who are coming to classes, and you hope that if one of these students were to go to one of those other classes with that other person over there, I mean, not that you don't want them to like wreck the reputation of moving creative, but like you hope that when they go there they're like accepted and people are like, wow, that was a really nice student, and like, oh yeah, they're from over here. There's like this whole interchangeable community. We'd like to think of ourselves as people who do the thing. We'd like to feel like we can just go plug in wherever we want, and the community that we learned and the way we express that community, that would fit, that puzzle piece would fit wherever I go. And
sure,
that ain't the case.
right,
That's not
yeah,
true. Um,
right.
but I feel like community is another thing that really would be the same sort of, how would you teach it other than to just model it and hope that you got other people in your group modeling it?
Yeah, I think that for me, that the idea of community is something that's really embodied by the group, and that kind of almost takes on a life of its own. And I think, you know, I haven't participated in so many different parkour communities. I think, um, going to Gerlev, going to ARDV. I think those communities have a similar vibe to me, that Movement Creative does, and for me, that means I feel seen in those communities, and I feel whatever it is I'm bringing to practice the practice of parkour in those contexts feels appreciated.
Yeah, it's valued,
um,
right?
and and there's also been other situations with a broader parkour community where I don't necessarily feel that way, and I don't necessarily feel as comfortable as I do when I'm in the, the smaller movement creative company community. Um, and I think part of that's definitely on me, and has to do with my own feelings about who I am within the practice of parkour, and what I can do and what I can't do, or what I feel comfortable doing with other people that I don't
Yeah.
know well.
Yeah.
Um, but I
So who
think
are you within the parkour community? That's the obvious, really hard question based on what you were just saying. Who do you see yourself as inside the parkour community?
uh, uh, gosh, that's a really hard question.
Indeed.
Um,
I can make it a little easier by saying, who would Jesse say you are? But let's first try the first person.
um, I would say, well, I can describe my experience in terms of how I think I've developed as a parkour mover, um, over time, and I think maybe that's what people see, and I think, mm, I'm an older person. I'm an older woman, uh, so I think that maybe has some might be interesting to people. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard
Uh,
question.
yeah,
I don't think I can answer that question, so I'm not going there. But it's an interesting meta. When I'm talking to guests, it's interesting to see, like, okay, what are the things that actually stump this person? Like, how far can I go here before I ask them a question where they go like, what? And I'm like, that question is really hard. People listening, yeah, hit pause and ask yourself, who do I see myself as inside the community? And having a quick and concrete answer doesn't necessarily mean that you have any clue
I
who you
yeah,
really
I
are.
I like to work hard, and I think that that's something that is, um, that's evident. I think if I'm training with you, I think that's something that people can see. I like to work hard. I like to figure things out. I do like to be analytical about learning new movements and figuring out how they fit into my body and how I can best execute them in a way that feels really good to me, like something
Hmm.
that feels fun, and that allows me to utilize all the years of training that lives inside of me. Those are the best movements, the
Yeah.
best moments for me, and that's what I think. I mean, I won't say every training session, because that wouldn't be true, but I think the majority of the times I'm out training, that's what I'm looking to find.
Yeah, I'm drawn to. Um, I'm not saying that we're exactly the same, but I'm drawn to analytical. I tend to overthink things. Because I'm not saying you're overthinking, but I tend to overthink things, and I really enjoy sessions where, preferably not because I'm so exhausted that my brain is literally off, but where I'm given the opportunity and then challenged and then often forced to do things that there isn't time really to think about them. Or, yeah, you can stand here and
Right,
think about it
right.
for 3 seconds and then go, and what you do has nothing to do with what you were just thinking about. Like, I really enjoy the opportunities where I discover in the moment that I'm simply doing. And that was one
Yeah.
lesson. I'm not saying that I totally internalized it and learned it, but one lesson that was first clear to me when I was training with some of the Yamak when I was over in France. And I kind of got like pulled aside and had like, this, you're doing this wrong. Like, you're just, Craig, you're just like, you're going at it. You're just, you have to like let go of the, so I'm not saying I've mastered it yet, but it's a piece of the movement practice that I really enjoy when I'm able to, like, I worked really hard. I've done a lot of QM. Like, and this movement
Yeah,
requires using my
yeah,
hands. So why can't I just
yeah,
enjoy that? Why, Greg?
yeah,
Why do I have to overthink this? Like that.
yeah.
I enjoy that part where I get to not overthink it. Is where I'm going with this. Which brings me back. I'm still stuck on the touch thing, but yeah. Cool. I'm watching the time tick by. Anything else that's top of mind for you at the moment? Because I've been, most people will just follow me all day, but sometimes they're actually thinking of something they want to say.
Uh, I don't think so. I mean, I think when I just to go back to thinking about designing sessions, there's such a strong framework that Jesse's developed for designing sessions uh, that is so helpful, um, that I draw on regularly. Um, and it's really fun to have that level of support while also thinking about what's what's what are the things that I really like and are the most important to me, and who are the people that I'm going to be teaching, and how do I use those things to make something that's going to be really engaging and fun and challenging, that will speak to the people that are coming to class. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of work, but it's like fun work, and it's satisfying. I can't, I don't think it's something that, it's something that I work at. It's something that I think about a lot before my sessions, and that I am thinking about while I'm coaching. Like, is this am I doing this thing in a way that people like? Are people enjoying this? Um, and there's definitely sessions where I've come away like, and I'll feel like, ugh, that wasn't my best.
Regression
That
to the
wasn't my
mean.
best work. Um, and what do I need to change to make it a little bit better? And then there's other times where I think I've come away from a session and I feel like, ugh, that was not great. But other people, there was something about it that really did resonate with people, and that they were able to connect with and get value from. Luckily for me.
I'm thinking of another story, which I'm not going to tell in the interest of time, about some coaching that I've done that didn't go well. But um, completely random, free association. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say the word dance?
I'm going to say awareness,
What about the word practice?
practice, discipline. I know
What about
that's
coaching?
coaching. It's funny. I feel like there's still a little bit of a divide for me in terms of dance and coaching. I do feel like, I mean, obviously, just because I'm human, my dance work comes out in my coaching. Um, but I think it's something that I still kind of struggle with. That I don't, I think maybe there's a part of me that doesn't want to be the dancer that now does parkour. And I don't know exactly why that is or what that is. Um, but I do think it's something that comes up for me. And
Hmm.
like a couple weeks ago, we were doing something. We were doing cowboy vaults, and I was I really wanted to work on the transition, like from side to side. So doing a cowboy vault and coming back and doing the other side. And what I was seeing, that people were doing these beautiful vaults, And then when after they land, they kind of drop the movement and then start it again. So I really wanted them to get that transitional moment of like catching your weight and like really using the ground to like push into doing the next vault. And somebody made a comment like, "Oh, we can really see that you're a dancer," um, which is just kind of funny. But I think that there is something about my training that other people um, who haven't had that same experience, it's not so those kinds of transitions are not so obvious. And so that's when my dance training, I think, can really come to the forefront and um, provide information to people to help them make those connections between movements so that they can start to develop more of a sense of flow in their work.
Terrific. I think that's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I will just say, and of course, the final question, 3 words to describe your practice.
Okay. Persistent, dedicated, curious.
3 terrific words. All right, Cristina, it was a pleasure to get a chance to, well, talk to you again, as it has
Thank
always
you
been in the
so
past.
much. This was really, really great and really so fun for me. And I was really honored that you asked me to do
My
this.
pleasure. All right, terrific. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, Craig.